Hey everyone, it is the third Wednesday of the month of July in the year 2016, and on every third Wednesday of every month, I bring you guys a commander on a budget. These are commander decks that I have built that are relatively cheap but fun to play and competitive. This month we are looking at Mistform Ultimus, a kind of obscure but very interesting commander. He has every creature type, so basically this deck tries to take advantage of the fact that he's every creature type by using a bunch of different lords, and when you have them all in play at the same time, Mistform Ultimus gets all kinds of crazy bonuses. So we'll talk about the things we want to do with Mistform Ultimus. So first we'll talk about this second pile here, which is just all cards that synergize well with Mistform Ultimus's ability to be all creature types. First we have Amoeboid Changeling, and the nice thing about it is also every creature type. Mistform Ultimus was printed before Changeling existed, and interestingly they haven't eroded it, but it's basically the same thing. This card is every creature type, and that's what that says too. Shapeshare is also a Changeling, but it also has the added bonus of being able to make Mistform Ultimus, who also is a shapeshifter, into whatever it needs to make it into, whatever's on the battlefield the biggest thing. We have Compelling Deterrence, which is just a good bounce spell because it can bounce any target permanent, non-land permanent. And with Mistform Ultimus in play, we have a zombie in play, so it makes the opponent discard a card. We have Diffusion Sliver, which can make it so our Mistform Ultimus is harder to kill because it's also a sliver. We have Rattle Chains, which we can use to flash in and give Mistform Ultimus hexproof. If we have Rattle Chains in play, we can also cast Mistform Ultimus as though it has flash, so that's also a bonus. We have Reality Shift. Oh, that's the wrong pile. Forget you saw that. Reality Shift is just a removal spell, but we have Spell Stutter Sprite, which is in here because there's actually several other fairies, but also because Mistform Ultimus counts as a fairy, so occasionally this will be able to counter stuff. We have Stony Book Banneret because it makes my Mistform Ultimus cost less, as well as all the other merfolk spells and wizard spells in the deck, which there's a decent number of. We have Vidalcan Aether Mage because it can actually wizard cycle for us, which allows us to find some of the wizards in our deck. It can also be used at instant speed to save our Mistform Ultimus from removal because Mistform Ultimus is a sliver. We have Call to the Kindred, which is one of the most fun things you can do with this deck because at the beginning of your upkeep, it lets you look at the top of cards of your library, and among those, you get to put a creature card that shares a type with it onto the battlefield. And because Mistform Ultimus is every creature type, we almost always are going to hit a creature. We have 35 of them in the deck, so that's a third of our deck is creatures, a little more than a third. So we're almost going to always hit a creature and get one into play for free off of Call to the Kindred after we put it on our Mistform Ultimus. We also have Winged Sliver to give our Mistform Ultimus flying, as well as our other slivers. Coral Helm Commander, who's a merfolk lord who scales and also has evasion, which will pump our Mistform Ultimus. Master of the Pearl Trident, who's a merfolk lord, so it pumps our Mistform Ultimus. Void Mage Prodigy, which sacrifices wizards to counter spells, counts Mistform Ultimus as well as itself, so that's a nice little effect. Conda's Banner is really sweet because you can put it on your Mistform Ultimus, and then every creature you have in play, because this deck is, well, there's some artifact creatures, but it's mostly blue creatures, every creature you have in play is going to get +2/+2 if you put Conda's Banner or Mistform Ultimus, because they're all going to share a color, at least almost all, and they're all going to share a creature type with them for sure, because he's every creature type. We have a Fetto Grifter, which allows us to sort of lock our opponent's important permanents down if we need to. We have Keeper of the Nine Gales, which similarly allows us to bounce our opponent's permanents. We have Marrow Regery, another merfolk lord. Mistform Ultimus is a merfolk, a bird, all of this stuff. Let's scroll on down. We have Sage of Fables, which makes wizards into the battlefield with additional +1/+1 counters on them, and you can remove them to draw cards. And Mistform Ultimus is a wizard. We have several other wizards in the deck too, as you've seen. We have Scion of Una, who's kind of like Rattle Chains in that we can flash it in to make it so our Mistform Ultimus can't be targeted. The downside is it gives Shroud, so if we want to put an aura on our Mistform Ultimus, then we can't do it once that happens. But we also have Merfolk Sovereign, who can pump our Mistform Ultimus and also make him unblockable. We have Xenograph, which is nice because depending on what I have in play, I can name a creature type based on what's going to give me the most benefits, and then all my creatures are merfolk, or they're all wizards or whatever, just like Mistform Ultimus is. There's Knowledge Exploitation, and because Mistform Ultimus is a rogue, you get to be able to prowl if you do combat damage with Mistform Ultimus, which is very strong if you can do that. It's also not the worst thing to have to cast for 7 in Commander, because every deck has powerful instants and sorceries. Sigil Tracer allows us to copy instants and sorcery spells. And this should also be over here. My bad. Azami Lady of Scrolls lets us draw a bunch of cards depending on wizards. Telekinetic Sliver lets us tap things. Whelming Wave is fun because it'll usually bounce everything but my Mistform Ultimus. And last, I've also played Xenographs and named like Krakens or something like that, which is even sweeter. Wing Splicer makes a Golem token and gives all Golems flying, including Mistform Ultimus. Shifting Sliver makes Mistform Ultimus unblockable. Notorious Throng, another card with Prowl that puts a bunch of fairies into play. And if you play it for its Prowl cost, you also get to take another turn. So that's one of the sweeter things we can do. Merrill Harbinger lets us search our library for one of our Merfolk Lords. Then we have Oathkeeper to Kano's Daisho, which we can stick on to Mistform Ultimus. And if it dies, it'll always return to the battlefield because it's a samurai. So that is pretty sweet. We have Adaptive Automaton, who's a lord for everything, so that's nice. We have Latchkey Fairy, another Prowl card, not as exciting as the others, but certainly fine, especially because we have other fairy synergies. It's also a rogue, so it lets us use our other Prowls as well. We have Patron Wizard, who works well with all our wizards, including Mistform Ultimus. We have Myr Galvanizer, one of our few artifact creatures, who can also untap our Mistform Ultimus and pump it. And Diviner's Wand, which pumps our Mistform Ultimus every time we draw a card and attaches to our Ultimus for free. So that's kind of what we're looking at here, is basically every tribal card you can find that's mono blue or an artifact is basically what you want in your Mistform Ultimus deck. This should also be over here. Gale Rider Sliver gives Slivers flying as well. So now we'll talk about just sort of the staples. Blue is in kind of a weird place because it doesn't have great removal, so you have to run some kind of weird removal spells, and I'll talk about those. So these are just sort of the staples that I run in a lot of blue decks, like Mana Vault. You want that in every blue deck, in every deck you make, at least until they ban it, which I think is probably not the worst idea ever because Commander games can be pretty lopsided because of Mana Vault and also because of Soul Ring, who's down here. But since they're legal, we play them. We have Skull Clamp, which is great. We have lots of small creatures who can draw us cards. Pondify is a removal spell we have to rely on because it destroys creatures, and almost nothing in blue does. They do get an Ape creature token. We have Jace the Living Guild Pact, who's least exciting of all the Jaces, but it's pretty good. It's pretty okay, at least, because it can bounce non-land permanents and stuff. Soul Ring, we already talked about. Jace Unraveler of Secrets, the most recent Jace. Pretty good, just way better than Living Guild Pact. We have Arcanus the Omnipotent, who's just a staple card to have in most blue commander decks, and it's also a wizard, which we have synergies with. Cyclonic Rift is a big staple for blue decks. It's just completely game-breaking if you can cast it usually. Lighthouse Chronologist, if your opponent allows him to live and you start taking tons of extra turns, then you feel great. Cold Steel Hearts and Mana Rock. Felwar Stones and Mana Rock. Reality Shift is another removal spell that we have to rely on. We kill a creature, but we also have to our opponent gets to manifest a card. Dig Through Time lets us find whatever it is we need. Sphere of the Sun's another Mana Rock. Trinket Mage lets us find one of our broken, one converted mana cost Mana Rocks, or our Skull Clamp if we want it. Jace Beleren draws us cards. Worn Power Stone's another Mana Rock. Clever Impersonator is a great blue staple that I think a lot of people are overlooking just because it can do so much work. It can be whatever you need it to be. Bident of Thassa is a great blue staple that draws you cards. Magus of the Future lets you basically extend the size of your hand. Duplicant is a removal spell we get to run. Phyrexian Ingester, same thing. Treasure Cruise draws us a bunch of cards. Curse of the Swine is another removal spell that gives our opponent creatures, but oftentimes it'll be worth it. And then we have Jace Memory Adept as well, which draws us cards, basically. Can mill our opponent too, I guess. So now we'll talk about the lands. Not a lot to talk about, but some of them are actually like tribal related. We have Blighted Cataracters to draw us lands. We have Elephant Graveyard, which regenerates elephants, which our Mistform Ultimus is, so that's a nice effect. We have Reliquary Tower to give us maximum hand size. Riptide Laboratory can bounce our wizards, including our Ultimus. And Swarm Yard can regenerate our Mistform Ultimus. We don't have any other insects, rats, spiders, or squirrels in our deck, except for, I guess, if we have Xenograph in play. We also have one Skyline Cascade just to, slow down our opponent some. So that's the deck, Mistform Ultimus. It's fun. It's weird. It's fun having like a Merfolk Lord, a Wizard Lord, and a Bird Lord all in play at the same time and getting all the benefits on your Mistform Ultimus. So I'll play 3 games with the deck now. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and if you want to make sure you get a sweet Commander budget deck every month, and you're not already a subscriber, click subscribe as well.